Hello and welcome to episode 38 of Your Exceptional Life, the weekly podcast dedicated to helping you rise to exceptional in each area of life. That's right, don't niche your life, niche your business all you like, or niche if you are in America. Don't niche your life though. You've got to look after your life purpose, your movement, your social life, your nutrition, your love and relationships, your growth, your wealth, your spirit, soul and faith. Marcus Pierce here with you for another week. Hope you have been humming along. And this week, and I say this probably the last couple of weeks, this week, having said don't niche your life, I want to focus on one area of life in this podcast because just like it was last week, a number of the areas of my life are just on continuity goals at the moment. I do have a lot to share on life purpose stuff, only because I'm excited about a number of projects coming up. I'm off to the Gold Coast in a couple of weeks to host the Go Vita annual conference, which is second time that I've hosted it, which is very exciting. There's a couple of other wonderful projects on the go, but I don't want to go through each area of life because I feel like it's Pete repeating, you know, my push-up challenge and catching up with friends and family and what I've been eating and all the rest of it. A lot of it, without sounding overly boring, it's all very same. And so one area that I haven't focused a lot on this podcast so far is your spirit, your soul, or your faith. And so it got me thinking, probably in the last 2 or 3 weeks, that by all measures, on all social levels, I am what you would call rather spiritually lazy. Spiritually lazy. That sounds a bit weird to say, but I am lazy on a spiritual level according to many socially acceptable measures. And so I've kind of written this down just to play with my thoughts on this and expand. And I've written down the title of this episode, 10 Things I Do to Overcome My Spiritual Laziness. And I don't want to read from my notes here. As you know, if I don't have notes, I will be here for hours because I could bang on about this forever. But I'm going to refer to these regularly because if I don't, again, we'll be here forever. But I took the time to make these notes, and so I want to share with you why I consider myself spiritually lazy on a social level or a socially acceptable level, but in essence, I don't feel lazy spiritually because I have a number of elements in my life that I feel really boost my spirit. And hopefully in sharing my example with you, hopefully you give yourself a break for the things that you already do, which are actually a spiritual practice, but social or our culture may not classify them as spiritual practices. So, as I say, to save us going over time, let me kind of refer to notes here. So when I say that I'm spiritually lazy, a couple of things is that I do things which boost it. So I know, for example, that I'm a good listener. Now, you might not call that spiritual, but I tend to call it spiritual. I love going for a walk in nature to get a breath of fresh air. I'm a feverish note taker, which helps my mind and to a point my spirit because I'm constantly taking notes down, which means I'm not overly buzzing the same track on the CD in my mind. I don't get anxious. I don't get guilty for things I haven't done. It's all just written down, which again I feel like calms my soul to a large thing. But again, I would give myself, as I've written down here, I would give myself probably a D+ at best if I was measuring myself spiritually on a social level. I don't go to church, sorry mum, and to my beautiful nana who's no longer with us, but you know, sorry not sorry if you know what I mean. Like, I was raised a Catholic, loved my Catholic upbringing. I've written down the notes here. I have great respect for pretty much every religion out there, but I don't necessarily think that I own or am owned by one religion. I have great respect for Buddhism, for the Hindus, for the Muslims, for the Catholics. I mean, my dad is a Protestant. Look, I probably don't even care enough to even be clear on it. I think Protestant. My mum grew up in a very strong Catholic family. Now, there are so many wars raged over different beliefs these days. I don't necessarily think that that's the wisest way to go about it, but I don't consider myself any less spiritual just because I don't belong to any one religion. And again, I'll share more on that in a moment. But I also believe, just, you know, on a level, and I definitely feel like it helps me, and I'd love to know whether you feel like it helps you. I don't have any, what's the word? I don't want to say concerns, but I have a fierce determination to see the greatness in any event or circumstance. So Again, as I said, I don't go to church, but I look at Mother Teresa and I go, well, Mother Teresa would not be Mother Teresa if it wasn't for poverty. Look at Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela would not be Nelson Mandela the way we know him if it wasn't for his 27 odd years, I think it was, that he spent in jail. Churia Pitt, who I speak about a lot at events, not so much on podcasts, but I love Churia Pitt. Now really, Churia Pitt wouldn't be famous if she was not burnt to a crisp in Catherine doing an ultra marathon. Now, if it wasn't for the experiences that she would have gone through, and in the words of Churia Pitt herself, often we don't realise how strong we are because we don't have the challenges that test our strength. I'm paraphrasing, but you get my point here. The spiritual strength that someone like Churia Pitt has really only come to the public eye, and maybe even to only Churia herself, because of the challenges that she's gone through. And so on a spiritual level, I have a strong belief that everything does happen for a reason and a purpose that serves us. Sometimes we have no idea why that is. Right now, we probably have no idea how the Las Vegas shooting can be an experience that is there for a reason and a purpose that serves us. Now, in time to come, hopefully it will. Maybe it is their, Martin Bryant, Port Arthur moment where things change. It feels like it's getting to that point, but there is no doubt that however bad something might seem, there is a perfection in it. I could put up images here of Alice Hertzsommer, who I've spoken about, the oldest survivor of the Holocaust, or oldest female survivor of the Holocaust, up until her death age 110. Yisrael Crystal, whose story I've shared on this podcast in the past, the oldest man to live up until his death age 114, or the oldest man alive up until his death age almost 114. But there is a greatness even in the things which seem horrid, which seem atrocious, which seem incomprehensible. And I am digressing from notes here, this is not in my notes, but and this sticks in my mind a lot. Jim Rohn, who is one of the forefathers of personal growth, who Tony Robbins worked for a number of years when he was young and the rest. Jim Rohn has a great line, and it's something that sticks in my mind a lot, and I want you to really think about this. And Jim Rohn, I would say, without knowing 100%, but staunch Catholic, mentioned God a lot in his talks, and regardless of his beliefs. But I always remember him saying that the way that the world has been set up, this game of life, is that we live in a conflict of opposites. We live in a world that is set up as a conflict of opposites. And I have no doubt personally that the reason why that conflict of opposites has been set up is to test our resolve to live with unconditional love. As I said earlier, you can't have Mother Teresa without poverty. You can't have peacemakers without war. You can't have war without peace. You can't have love without hate. Now, no matter what religion you belong to, that is a belief that does not require you to have a religious belief. That requires you to have a belief that your soul is limitless, that there is love in the peace and the war. There is love in the good and the bad. Now, whether you believe that or not, it's not my job. But all I'm sharing with you here is, whilst I may be perceived as spiritually lazy, say by someone that goes to church every Sunday, I think there's a lot more to exceptional spirit than just following a certain belief system or a certain religion. I think it goes a whole lot deeper than that. So a few things that probably add to that depth. I think talking to oneself, I'm not sure if I've got that here. My self-talk, I know, is I love the way I speak to myself. I have a great self-talk. I think I'm very encouraging to myself. I think I give myself a kick up the butt when I need to, but I'll often remind myself that even in the struggles, this is part of the path. Carolyn Mace, spelled M-Y-S-S, I'll make an effort. No, I will put Carolyn Mace in the show notes here. Carolyn Mace has a great one-liner. Just shared this at a lunch that I had with my brother-in-laws Ash and Chris and my father-in-law Rob yesterday. But Carolyn Mace has a great one-liner. It is this: we are not on the wrong path. Just some of us aren't managing it that well. We are not on the wrong path. Sometimes we just aren't managing it that well. And this is really important to consider in the way that you speak to yourself. Are you reminding yourself that you're on the right path? Are you trying to find yourself, as in you've lost yourself, as in you've gone off the path? The key is that wherever you are right now, it is all part of your adventure, all part of your journey, all part of the game that is life. And whatever game you're playing, whatever adventure you're on, sometimes you have times where you feel like you're about to lose a life, where you feel like it is too hard, or sometimes you get complacent because it is just so good. You're having so much fun that you then take the eye off the ball and to use a sport expression, and you then begin to recognize that it's time to get back, or mentally it's time to get back on the awareness that is your path. So just be really mindful of what is your self-talk saying to you in terms of where you're at in your life. Do you feel like you're off track or on track? There are times where you skid along the path, and there are times where you might be in the gutter, so to speak. Think of a bowling ball going down an alley or a lane in a 10-pin bowling game. Now, it's still the path, but sometimes we are in the gutter, and it's just time we got to do the work to get back into the middle. And often that work is hard, but doesn't mean it can't be done. So there's some things for you to consider. Now, just a couple of elephants in the room around where spirit lies in 2017. As I've said, I don't go to church. I don't meditate ever. Like I just don't. I mean, I've done it. I've had a go at it. If you ask me to sit down in a room and quiet my mind, I don't necessarily have a problem with it. But it's not something that I schedule into my day to do. There are other things that I do which some people might call meditating, but it's not something that I feel inspired necessarily to go out and do. But here's the elephant in the room, and I'll just jot a few of these down. I know people, and you may know people, who meditate in the morning and meditate in the night, but they exude anything but a sense of calm in the middle of the day. And so for me, there is, they're looking for inner peace, they're improving their brain waves, they're connecting to source, but they're still snappy and unhappy. And I say, go figure. Like, that's just not, you might call that, you're working at it. Don't tell me that you're trying to do it, but there's got to be a level of congruence. I don't believe that it's that hard to get on well with the world on a day-to-day basis, regardless of your upbringing. I think it's just a part of a story where people say I have a block that I find it hard to listen or to be happy or to be nice. I'm not up for that. I just think it's all about how willing are you to improve. It's very easy to say that I have a block or that I can't or that I'll try. None of those language patterns make it any closer for you to make progress. And so something to consider. You may know people, I know people who do yoga, but they are so mentally rigid, they are emotionally rigid, and they are socially rigid that I actually think is a bit of a cheeky chops. It's quite laughable, and there's also an element that's very sad. I remember, and I've read this story out a number of times at live events. John Robbins shares it in Healthy at 100, which will be sitting on my messy bookshelf behind there. But John Robbins shares a story of a couple. The wife writes into John Robbins saying, I am so angry at the world. My husband and I did yoga every day for 30 years. We ate the perfect diet. We never had a hamburger, a can of Coke, a piece of chocolate, a cigarette, whatever it is. And my husband died of ulcers or some form of cancer in his mid-60s. Just when we're about to really do our big dreams and travel the world and all the rest of it. She was angry at the world. She then became diabetic, depressed, overweight, totally unleashed on all the things that she had given up, so to speak, that she couldn't have over the course of her life. Don't get me started on saying I can't have this. And she she lived a life of mental rigidity, social rigidity, emotional rigidity, in the, I suppose, exchange of doing yoga every day, having a yoga practice and eating the perfect diet. There was no flexibility. That does not work. It doesn't work. I still can't find someone that's living this incredible, great, long life full of quality and quantity that has a level of rigidity. Rigidity is very different to discipline, okay? There's a difference. It's a podcast for another day. I love discipline. I think it's fabulous. I love it. But you know what? If you create too many things to be disciplined about, that's called hard to win, easy to lose, because you got 10 things that you got to be disciplined about. I've got to write in my gratitude journal, do half an hour of yoga, half an hour of meditation. I've got to visualize, I've got to practice mindfulness, have a green juice, make a green smoothie, have some ACV, wash down my fire tonic, then do some alkalized water, put lemon juice in there, have some apple cider vinegar, do a fast, do an enema, all the rest of it. Tell you what, man, you got like 15 things to be disciplined on. You'll be rigid in no time. You'll be no fun, and you won't be having any fun. You'll just be going through a to-do list of wellness or spiritual enlightenment, and it just becomes one big to-do list, and as I say, takes the fun out of it. So you might be spiritually lazy like me, or you may have a list 100 miles long and you are spiritually worn out in the pursuit of spiritual enlightenment. So let me give you 10 things that I do, and I'm not telling you to do them. I'm not shooting these on you. I'm just sharing 10 rituals, activities for my life. Don't know where I'm up to with the pictures here. Oh, this might be all right. Where I find them spiritual activities. So here's number one. Number one for me is waking up at 5 a.m. Now, granted, this is the first week of daylight savings. Hand on heart, without banging the mic. I did not get up at 5 o'clock on Wednesday or Thursday. I got up at 5 o'clock on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Anyway, 3 days this week I've missed my 5 a.m. Now I emailed a friend, I'll tell you who it is, I emailed Amanda at Well and You, and I said, how have you been going with the 5 a.m.s? Because I have dismally failed this week. It's just been so dark, I'm all out of whack, I'm buzzing at night, I've been going to bed too late because I've been knocked about by this 1 hour time difference thingamajig, and I just haven't been getting up at 5 o'clock. Now, I'm not going to hate on myself. I'm just going to resolve. Essentially, I write 400 words of my book at 5 o'clock each morning. So it's actually just been 400 words missed becomes 800 words the next day. So this morning was actually 1,600 words of writing. And what I did was I got the 1,600 words done, but then I only did a less amount of exercise, but I still got my push-ups done. Anyway, now I'm banging on, I'm going away from the notes. But I find waking up at 5 a.m. spiritual because there's something about the silence of 5 a.m. and the pitter-patter of a keyboard, writing about things which I love to talk about, and playing some nice, beautiful, calm Hans Zimmer or the shift music or just something beautiful, and it just enriches my soul. Followed on from that, as you probably know, 6 a.m. is exercise time, and particularly if the kids haven't woken up and I've still got time to myself, or if I drive down to the beach and run along the beach and listen to my music and do my push-ups and see the sun rising on my left and the moon going down or whatever it's doing on my right, I just love that. That is just so good for the soul. I don't feel, personally for me, that I'm going to get the same bounce out of doing half an hour of meditation. For other people, they would, okay? Which is why I'm saying you got to pick your poison, or you got to pick your potion, or you got to do what's right for you, all right? This is what is right for me. It feels wonderful, feels very congruent. Now, socially, I have a wonderful time in the morning. Where am I up to here? Having breakfast. With my family. Now that's probably dinner there, but I couldn't find an eggs and greens photo. You know, I'm sure you've been busting to see my eggs and greens in the morning, but just seeing my children healthy, happy, loving their food, loving the company of each other. We're all engaging. There's no phones on. If I'm all up and about, I might have a bit of music playing in the background. Drives Sarah nuts. She comes in and she's like, it's so loud in here. Turns the music off. But at the time, I absolutely love it. And I just love just sitting back and I feel like a king. I'm like, look at this, happy, healthy children, beautiful food. They're all buzzing about the world. And you know what, life's good. You know, in that moment, no matter what's going on in the world, life is absolutely flying along. I find it very spiritually enriching. I didn't get a picture up of it, didn't find it, but walking into the room of sleeping children is a very spiritually calming exercise. You go into a dark room, you might have a salt lamp on, the kids are just flat out asleep, it is so quiet in there, and it's just like, I feel uncomfortable even just talking about it right now, but no matter what type of day you've had, if you walk into the room of a sleeping child, there's just something seeping out of their skin that is just soulful. It is just a beautiful energy in a sleeping child's room, and I love it. I just love, at the end of the day, I just poke my head in, or I might even walk in, or I might even just kneel down by their bed and stroke their hair, and I might tell them how much I love them and that they're beautiful individuals, and I just am so excited to be their dad, and I'm so grateful that they chose me to be their dad, and all of these wonderful goo goo gaga lovey-dovey one-liners, and it's just a beautiful experience. A sleeping child's room. Nothing quite emotionally frustrating as a wakeful child's room as well, may I add. All right, next, jumping in the ocean. I find I make this a part of my day, particularly, not every day, but if the Brunswick River is blue, not brown, if the Brunswick River is blue, and it's, you know, I've done my work, it's 11:30 in the morning and I'm about to go home to do more work and have some lunch, I will just make sure I've got a towel in the car, probably make sure I've got my boardies on. I'm not going to go on my jocks. I'm not going to be all Byron Shire and nudie either, but I'll jump in the river, and I've just got a 3 duck dive rule, because I'm not one to just spend half an hour in the water soaking up the rays. I'm just like, duck dive, it's often cold in the Brunswick River, duck dive, 3 in, I'm done, cooked. It only takes 5 minutes to literally between getting in, getting out, drying in the car. and it's good for the soul. And that might happen at 12 midday, might happen at 3 or 4 in the afternoon, but it doesn't have to be a big deal to have a spiritually uplifting experience in your day. It could be going for a walk, it could be calling a friend, it could be doing some squats, it could be meditating in a quiet room, it could be going to the public park and doing some downward dogs. I don't care what it is, but spiritually uplifting exercises throughout the day don't have to take a long time. All right, what have I got here? Using people's names. If spiritual growth and spiritual health is all around connection, then you must remind yourself that being disconnected from people is spiritually deficient. So one way to be spiritually connected to people is to use their names. I have a very high standard on using people's names. There'll be people listening to this that know me well, and you know how much I love remembering people's names. I pride myself on it. There's no doubt on a metaphysical woo-woo level, I was indoctrinated into remembering people's names by my mum. My mum is a stickler for manners. She's great with people's names, and I have followed on that trait, and I pride myself on doing it. The only real trick or tip I have on it is just on using people's names, on telling people, it's nice to meet you, John, it's nice to meet you, Matilda, thanks for coming over, Samantha. And if you forget, as I tend to do, I will just suck up my pride and let people know that I have forgotten their name, or what's your name again, would you please remind me your name. I don't try and find sneaky ways to learn it. Like, there's nothing more awkward than doing a sneaky introduction by going to introduce the person who you don't know to someone else in the hope that they will introduce themselves to this other person, and then you will hear their name, because that's not a guarantee. They won't always do that, and that is socially awkward. So on top of that, I have a little mantra that I like to shut up in conversation. Now, this is a podcast. I have no one to talk to. You're listening to me. Silences don't really rock and roll on a podcast, so this might sound like I am gas bagging, and in truth I am. But in a conversation, I do what I can, and I make it a priority, and it doesn't always happen, as my great colleague on 100 Not Out, Damien Christoph, will know, because I do have a tendency to interrupt every now and again. But in conversation, I do check in with myself regularly to shut up and be quiet and listen. And there is something very spiritually uplifting around listening to the human being and asking questions about them. I use words like, wow, that's amazing, congratulations, fantastic, good on you, I'm so happy for you. Just it's all about them. And you know what, if you look at, say, Dale Carnegie's work, How to Win Friends and Influence People, or any of the great communication masters from years gone by, any great conversationalist is someone that actually doesn't talk that much. Because a great conversationalist is interested in the converser, and they are less interested in them being the converser. So practice, and you've probably got parents or grandparents that have said, we've got 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. But you really want to honor that mantra and really consider the art of shutting up in conversation and seeing where it takes you on a spiritual level, from the front of actually connecting you to that individual more. Connection is a spiritual exercise, whether it's connection to an ant on a tile or a human being having a deep and meaningful with you. It doesn't matter. It's actually just the art of connection often comes back to the art of being silent. So give that a go if it speaks to you. Now, on a gratitude front, I probably put a picture up somewhere here earlier. I think I did. I am not one for, there it is, gratitude journals. It is not my thing. I will fall asleep writing down my gratitudes in a journal. For other people, it is their spiritually uplifting exercise. But hand on heart, it's not mine. What I like to do, as Martin Seligman's research dictates, is that the best form of gratitude, or the most, I don't want to say best because you may do it differently, the most powerful form of gratitude in terms of Seligman's research and other research is being grateful to people in by looking at them, human contact, face to face, real time. So little things is just using manners, saying thank you for a coffee, waving to people on the road when they let you by, saying thank you for the meal that is made, and not just saying thank you, but looking them in the eye and actually saying, I'm so grateful, babe, that in the midst of 3 kids and Tommy's crawling around your ankles and Darby wants this and May wants you to watch her concert and you're making, dinner, like, thanks for going through that pain, which I definitely see as pain, in order to bring a healthy meal to the table. Like, you're friggin' amazing. I don't know how you do it. I would have gone nutty trying to even replicate anything like this. Truly grateful for your efforts. And then I would generally say, because I would say that, then I would say to the kids, guys, thanks mum, you got the best mum ever, amazing meal, how good's this? Like, it's real-time gratitude. It's not my style to then go at night on my desk. I've been spending enough time at the desk going, what am I grateful for today? Like, that's boring for me. And why am I grateful for it? I'm not as much of a writer as I am an in-person experiencer, as you can probably gather from this podcast. So if that's something that you go, why aren't I inspired to write on my gratitude journal? Well, maybe you want to practice the art of doing it in real life. Could work. And finally, I like to honour my love language. Little video playing there for those of you that are watching this on the video version. But the 5 love languages, mine is physical touch. I am massive into physical touch. It's not words of affirmation. It's not gifts. It's not acts of service. It's not quality time. Look, they're all important to me, don't get me wrong, but nothing's more important to me than physical touch. So I will make physical touch a part of my life. I'm a very big fan of Virginia Satier's one-liner, the family therapist. Some call her the best family therapist ever. And her mantra was, 4 hugs a day are necessary for survival, 8 for maintenance, and 12 for growth. So if you've seen me at an event, you've probably been part of my hugging exercise, and most people, particularly those, I love the feedback at the end of an event, and they're like, you know what, that hugging thing, I hated it at the beginning, but I loved it at the end. And I'm like, you know what, that's what it's all about. I am massive into physical touch in a good way. A lot of people hear that and they think it's all about sex. It's not all about sex. It's actually just about having a tactile relationship with humanity. It could be high fives, back slaps, man hugs, girl hugs, big hugs, little hugs, hugs with kids, hugs with strangers, hugs with elderly people. You might hug a dog. I don't care. But it's just physical touch, and it's one thing which a lot of us, particularly in the PC world, have almost become uncomfortable with because we're not sure if that's socially acceptable and politically correct. Oh, I don't even care if it's politically correct or not. There's a great bunch of videos called Free Hugs. If you haven't seen the Free Hugs videos, watch them on YouTube. I'll put one in the show notes. Just, they're hilarious, particularly the awkward moments where people don't go for the free hug and they shy away. So that is my 10. Again, I'll put all of these in the show notes here. You'll see my 10 kind of actions that alleviate my spiritual laziness. Now again, sorry, not sorry to those of you that go to church every week that think I'm crazy for not going to church, but that's okay. I'm very happy with my spiritual habits, my rituals. All I want is for you to be happy with whatever you have. Mostly what I would love is for you to consciously create your spiritual habits and rituals. Don't just kind of hope that it happens or wish that it happens, but truly find out what is it that enriches your soul. I've shared with you 10 of mine. I'm sure I've got 10 or 20 others, but these are the ones that came to my mind as I really considered this exercise. I would love to know what yours are. You can connect with me and share with me yours on Facebook at Marcus D. Pearce, Instagram at Marcus D. Pearce, at the website marcuspearce.com.au, and always feel free to send me an email, marcus@marcuspearce.com.au. Thanks again for your support. Really appreciate your support of this message and all things Exceptional Life Blueprint. Connect with me in the iTunes store. I'd love for you to give a 5-star rating to this podcast. It allows iTunes to share this message with the world. And until next time, as always, continue to live your exceptional life.